Welcome back, and I've got something to say. Thank the Lord that Andrew Tate is behind bars. If you're new to my channel, man, please hit that subscribe button, hit that join button. I want to talk about not just Andrew Tate and his charges, because that's played out, although I got to recap it just a little bit. I want to really get into the cult-like qualities of the manosphere and why I think that the youth are falling into these traps. So as some of you know, Andrew Tate has been arrested in Romania. He's been talking about the nefarious things that he's been doing for a little while, but now the charges are starting to come out. More information has started to come out. More evidence has started to come out. And I'm not going to lie, it's looking very damning for the ex-amateur kickboxer, quote unquote, top G hustle university guy, Andrew Tate. It's not looking well for him. Listen, he's got a laundry list of things, and there's some evidence that has come out. I just want to go ahead, let's hop into it, and then we'll go from there.
These are his words, not my words. And I'm not going to take it out of context.
You're effectively taking girls, teaching them how to make unlimited money from home, and then making sure they give it all to you.
So you're making sure that you're teaching girls how to make a shit ton of money. Right off the bat, he tells you his main goal is to have them work for him and him get all the money.
I might not be too much in the game. For those that know what I'm about to say, the lingo that I'm about to use, I might be a square, but that sounds like a pimp. What's the difference between what he just described and a pimp? Human trafficking is like a major problem in a lot of different places, sex trafficking specifically. But what's the difference between what Andrew Tate just described and being a pimp? You do all this hard work. I mean, work. Shouts out to Rihanna. And then you give him all the money. How is this different than being a pimp?
Then I realized I had about 5 girlfriends, all smoking hall. And females are an asset. Why don't you work for me so we spend more time together? Work for you doing what? So you'll have a webcam business. Oh, I don't want to do that. So, okay, I know you don't want to do that, but listen, come, let's have a meeting. Let's just talk about it. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. Fine. But let me explain it to you properly. In fact, I'll bring one of the girls who works for me. Your bottom bitch, the new girl, you go out for fucking a nice dinner. Your bottom bitch is the one who does the selling. You don't do the selling.
What he's talking about is like a common tactic in like pimp culture and in the sex trafficking environment. I'm gonna spoil her story. Hey, if I get in trouble for it later, I get in trouble for it later. I used to have a best friend in high school who fell victim to sex trafficking. She was young, she was impressionable, and I could talk about all the characteristics as to why she was impressionable later in the video, because that's when I want to talk about like the cult-like mentality and how people fall victim to these things. But she was young and she was impressionable. This was like right before or after we had graduated from high school. So I'm talking about 18 years old. And, you know, she was approached on Instagram by a young lady, DM'd her, said, hey, I think that you're hot. I think that you're pretty. I want you to come and hang out with me in Miami. I have some friends that are hot and attractive, and I just want to have a good time and maybe show you how to do the lifestyle that you're trying to obtain the right way. At this time, my friend was dancing and she was working at the little clubs in Atlanta. This is fresh out of high school. Cool. The person on the phone buys the plane ticket for her and everything. The way that she tells me the story is that from the airport, from the Miami International Airport, she gets picked up in a black Escalade and the car is hotboxed. So immediately they put her on drugs to a different degree. Now this is different than like the way that smokers smoke. People say they smoke to different degrees all the time, but what she described to me is that they had 7 blunts in rotation and there might have been like 4 of them or 5 of them in the car. And then immediately when they got to the location, they started drinking heavily. So already you're smoking good weed, you're drinking good drink, and showing a lifestyle. Miami's pretty, the beaches, all these different things, way different from your hometown. And the next thing you know, there's this guy who's supposed to be cool. He's supposed to be this godlike figure. He's supposed to have all this drip on, and he's about to show you a lifestyle that you could have never obtained back in your small home. And the last thing that she said for the first 2 days, 3 days, all they did was smoke and drink nonstop from sun up to sundown. When you woke up and when you went to sleep, all they did was smoke, drink, party. They did a little light shopping, but for the main thing, they just smoked and drank. And then this guy, he's showing you love the whole time, complimenting you 24/7, and he ends up having sex with you. And now you feel like you're engulfed in this lifestyle. You've never felt this feeling before. And this is how these things work. Usually the selling does not get done. That was the last thing that she said happened to her. The selling does not get done by the man, the pimp in this situation. The selling gets done by the bottom bitch, the woman or whatever. Pimping is a nefarious act. Pimping is grape, it's human trafficking, it's sex trafficking. It's all these words tied up into one.
I had a separate phone with all my girls' guys in that phone. and I kept control of it. Don't let your girl have this, because if your girl ever runs off and leaves you, you don't want her to have an address book of all the guys she can get money from. You want her to leave and go, well, I don't know the account, I don't have the password to the account, I've never set it up before, I don't know how the banking works, I don't have any of my guys' phone numbers, I have nothing. And that's why they don't want to leave, because they're like, oh, well, he has everything, I need him. I'm telling you, it's a very important element, that control. And they will leave if you don't have every aspect under control. Tax is also another important element for controlling your woman. You're not going to pay anybody tax because you're getting paid in Bitcoin. You need to tell your girl that you're paying the tax, because girls are lazy and girls are stupid. Girls don't understand how taxes work. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, we've made this much money, but I'm going to pay the tax to make sure we don't get in trouble. Now that allows you to do two things. One, it's another control element.
So as you notice, like a common theme that Tate is talking about is like establishing control and then establishing control and establishing control and establishing control. All these are elements of like pimp culture, of cult culture, the human trafficking culture. All this is just about his perception on these women. And if this is what Top G is, if this is what Hustle University, I guess that's up to you to discern if that's fine. But this is just blatant disrespect for women, and this is a crime. However, if you do it in different countries, you know, the laws are looser, the restrictions are way worse. But ultimately too, there's like fraud cases. I mean, he's talking about having them sign documents and all these other things, you know, lying to them about taxes and how to keep the money. All this is fraud. All this is tax evasion. All this is human trafficking, sex trafficking, all these different things wrapped up into one. And he's been bouncing around from country to country, so he should have been able to get away with it. But, you know, going on the internet and blasting it is probably one of the worst ideas ever. What I really want to talk about in this video is the idea of the manosphere and how people got sucked into Tate, and ultimately what cults are. Because I think a cult is a way to describe like a lot of these ideologies and mindsets that we see on the internet, and the way that they're being pushed, the preachers that they have behind them just scream like the cults of the 70s and the 60s, the Jonestowns, the cults like that, the different churches in Detroit and everything like that from back in the 50s and the 60s. This is what this screams to me every time I watch this. So a common theme with like cult leaders is they get a problem and they conflate the issue to the highest degree. You're losing autonomy. You are failing in this aspect of life. You are looking for the right answer or some type of enlightenment or some spiritual awakening, and I have the way to it. Communism is taking over. The homosexuals are coming after you. We're losing our tradition. Men are becoming less manly. Women are becoming less womanly. These are the problems that they come out and conflate. And all these things aren't anything new. If you go back and look at the cults of the past, like some of the historic cults, infamous cults like Heaven's Gate, I mentioned Jonestown, the Manson family. Hell, even some people would say like Scientology or religion is some sort of cult. But I digress in that conversation. But all these people had consistent themes, and the themes were, hey, this problem exists and I have the solution. I'm gonna inflate this issue, conflate it with other issues, and push it to you, a very impressionable and vulnerable person, in order to draw you in. And so they get these people in and they sell them a product or a lifestyle, and they get them so caught up in the whirlwind that so much time and so much effort and so much energy has gone by that people don't even realize they've given up their entire lives to this. And I promise you, these things play hand in hand. If you look at the demographics and if you look at the outcomes of the situations, maybe in the past they ended up in death, but in today's society, they end up with these fan bases of people roaming the streets, cheering and jeering for this pimp to be released from prison because he's the top G and he has all this good influence and everything like that. Take, for example, Prophet Jones, aka James Jones, of the Church of Universal Triumph, based out of Detroit. He was a person who migrated from the South up to Detroit during the Great Migration with Black African Americans, and saw an opportunity to create a church for those people who were looking for salvation or a home or something to cling on as times were tough during that time. You know, leaving the South with nothing up to foreign places, very hard. And he promised them, this is the way to become a better person, and I can show you that way. Now, all in all, I'll allow you to go back and look into the history of that. It's a very interesting story that turned sour. However, it reminds me of some of these modern day cults. When I look at the Fresh and Fits, when I look at the Kevin Samuels, when I look at the Sneakos, when I look at the Andrew Tates, when I look at the guys populating the red pill manosphere, especially the ones that sell courses, I see a bunch of impressionable people falling victim to cult leaders and buying up courses, giving themselves to this and letting time completely escape them. Letting time completely pass by. You sat on the internet for about 50 hours just watching this content, digging the rabbit hole even deeper and not going out and experiencing life, not going out and figuring out if what they're saying it's true or how can I put this to the test. And when you look back at what you've accomplished in the 2, 3, 4 years that these guys have been out and these guys have been preaching their message, what have you done to even implement some of the things that they preach to make you better as a person? The only thing that you've done is created a greater reason in your mind to further the divide between man and women, to make the gender war greater on your end. And the saddest part about it is what you don't even realize is that you claim to have left one matrix, but you stepped into another. All these people did was peddle you course after course after course. You know, my good friend B Souls put out a video in which he dissected Sneako's entertainment course, and it was a load of malarkey. It was just straight barnacles. That's crazy phrasing. But ultimately, like, the course he was selling was nothing. The consultation with Kevin Samuels, we've heard word about it. It's all general nonsense. This guy was selling clothes at Lenox Mall, not at the mall, but outside the mall, out of his car, put on a good suit and started bashing women. Looked completely different from back in the day when he was telling us about Dior colognes and Chanel fragrances and Chelsea boots. Andrew Tate is putting on an entire persona to make you believe that he is this guy, and he may be this guy that actually sex traffics, but some of the things that he says is absolutely ridiculous. We've seen Sneako's past. We saw his upbringing. He's a YouTuber. And from what I know about YouTubers, they are very introverted people. We saw his collapse on the peer-to-peer podcast when he let his girlfriend sleep with another man at a sex party, and now we see him today. And there's a lot of people that go out there and defend the Andrew Tates of the world. I saw Ish, I think is his name, off of the Joe Budden podcast, say that some of the things that he said was right, or some of the things that he said made sense. The only thing that I have to say to those people is that, like, a broken clock is right twice a day, as the phrase goes. If he told you, hey, eat your vegetables, it'll make you live a better lifestyle, that's absolutely fine. If he told you some Snapple Facts, bottle top life lesson, I guess that's cool. But what about the other things that he said? What about the other harm that he's done? That should honestly, in my opinion, with the levels that he goes to, should take away from the entirety of his message. If he told you to do 10 push-ups a day, but on the other end, he told you this is how he was getting his money, by manipulating women, I don't even see how you could take into consideration the 10 push-ups a day method. I think the internet is severely needing in, like, positivity as opposed to negative pushes and influence. Too many viral clips going around surrounding, like, the negative talking points of self-help for men, when there are people out there like Jason Wilson, who is a black man who is well-spoken. He is very much pro-men and pro-men's health, pro-young boys and young boys' health, and he does that message without deciding to tear down another subsection of people. But it's not going to get the clicks because it's not sexy. It's not sexy. It's not degrading. There are so many people like Kev on Stage and his wife who talk about marriage, who talk about relationships from a much more positive and wholesome way without deciding to try to put the two genders against each other. I think that the space is lacking a lot of that. Ultimately, the people that get into these rabbit holes and these matrices are very impressionable people. They lack love, they lack guidance, they lack perspective, and all they see all day is a better life based off of perception. All they see is Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok of what is a better life, what is perception, all these videos, these quick hitters, how to get this woman, and all those things counter what they are. But the minute that you ground yourself, and I think that this is how my ex-friend got caught up in these situations, the minute that you ground yourself and realize that I can make the best of my situation with where I am, I think your outcomes will be totally different and totally better. But once you shoot for these horizons without realizing what's in front of you, that's when you fall short. And you're not working on the things that honestly will push you further in life than your looks and the amount of dollars that you have. Because does it really obtain happiness? When we look at the outcomes of all these people, and I'm not even just talking about these people now because I'm grouping them in with the cult. When we look at the outcomes of all these cults, what What is it? And if you feel like that's the path you want to continue to go down, if you feel like you want to continue to push some gender war that doesn't exist, if you want to continue to push these ideologies from people who are pimps and rapists, that's on you. But I could be wrong.